Good morning, good day, and good evening. I'm, as always, your host, Brody Robertson, and you may have heard of the recent effort to revive the old KDE 4 Oxygen theme. And today, we have the person who is leading the charge on that. I assume other people have gotten involved with the project since sort of it began, but introduce yourself and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me here. My name is Filip Fila. I'm actually a political sociologist, but this is a hobby for me, so I do a little bit of programming, a little bit of designing. I've been a KDE user for a long time, actually started with KDE 4, so I have a sort of emotional attachment with these themes as well, and the design from that era. This project, you can call it a revival, reboot, however you want to call it. First started off as just the idea of fixing up these themes. One day I just switched to the Oxygen theme. I hover over a button and there's black text on a black background. And I'm like, that looks pretty bad. But it's grown into something so much more. I would say now it's also a project about the whole like Oxygen, not just the Plasma theme, but also the icon theme, window decorations, and so on. Just fixing them up a little so they look respectable, so they're up to today's standards, and basically they don't look like abandonware.
Because that's kind of the state it was in, right? It, like, before you started sort of playing around with it, it had been taken out of like the core Plasma, yes?
I guess the answer would be actually yes and no, because several KDE developers actually did patch up Oxygen. Obviously, they ported it to Plasma 5, and they also ported it to Plasma 6. So I don't take any credit for this. This is the regular work they've done, and this should be definitely mentioned for this. So as far as the icon theme, the window decorations, the application style, that thing, nothing changed regarding that. It's still being shipped. But with the Plasma themes, there was a change. So the Oxygen theme was moved to its own repo, and the Air theme got deleted, unfortunately.
Air
I
is
think
the
these
light variant,
changes,
yes?
Air, the light theme, yeah, it was deleted.
Mhm.
In Plasma 5, they were actually shipped alongside Breeze, which I think wasn't ideal. I think this solution right now is absolutely the correct one. If someone wants an Oxygen look, they install the package, and if they don't have these things on their system.
Mhm. Right, and if it's, especially with kind of the state it was in, where it was obviously ported to Plasma 5, but not properly being ported to Plasma 6, you're obviously going to have, whilst 5 and 6 do look very similar, there is obviously changes that have happened along the way. There's new functionality that is there, and I would assume with any of the new... I actually don't know. With any of the new stuff that was added, what did the Oxygen theme, like, do with that? Did it just, like, look entirely broken, or...
I think it was actually broken before that because, as I mentioned in the blog post, even a simple thing such as its color scheme was wrong. So for buttons, and then if you had a combo box and a drop down, it was light text on a white background. It was just something simple, and it goes to show that these Plasma themes were perhaps the least maintained part of Oxygen. And so the end result was what it was, and that's why, I mean, the idea was to fix them up. Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm. So I guess probably a good place to start is you did say you have sort of a nostalgia for the KDE 4 look, that Oxygen look. Did you prefer Air or Oxygen back then? Just kind of curious.
Oh, Oxygen.
Okay.
Not a light themes guy,
Fair
but
enough.
I know there's people that like it, and also due to like historical respect, because actually for most of KDE4's run, Air was the default theme.
Mm,
So it seemed a little bit unfair that it was just deleted,
mm, mm,
but obviously it needed maintaining. So
mm.
yeah.
So that kind of leads me into where I was going with that. Why even bother? Like, yeah, it's neat to be able to do it, but you know, the look of Plasma today, it's this Breeze look. I like Breeze. I know some people complain about, you know, Plasma, this modern design. I don't like the look of Plasma. There's always someone that has some complaint about it, whether or not they can articulate what the complaint is. But I personally like the look of it. So,
Mm.
with that being the case, I guess why even bother trying to bring this into modern Plasma?
Ooh, I think there's so many avenues to explore here. It's like, right, from like a business point of view, cost benefit sort of thinking. You have a theme that was developed in 2000s, and now you're patching it up, maintaining it. If you're just using this logic to think about things, it doesn't make sense. Of
Right.
course, you just say, nuke it. Let's invest energy in something that's more current. That's a default offering. Let's make it look better. But to me, the bigger story here is that KDE isn't business. It's a community of values, and in that sort of community, it exactly makes sense that a theme like Oxygen could survive. So a theme from 2000s, and that's the beauty of KDE. And another value that I see in KDE is choice, something that defines it like as both as its core value, and even if you're looking at it from a market point of view, like looking at the other competitors, KDE offers the Plasma desktop offers you a chance to customize it. It's not opinionated in the sense it doesn't offer one theme or whatever that thinks it's the best, but it gives you the choice. And it, precisely again, in this sort of system with these values, having a theme that might not be shipped by default, but it's part of the community, I think actually makes a lot of sense. So that's for the KDE part. Like for the there's this historic part, then there's this design part. Historically, it has value. You have to admit it because it was such a big part of KDE4, and KDE4 is a big episode in KDE's history. Design-wise, I guess part of this is subjective always, right? But personally, when I was switching from KDE4 to Plasma 5, I wasn't enthused at first. I thought it looked worse. Like I looked at KDE4 and thought, this is fancy. Look at all these details. This is very impressive. It was a design that impressed me. You know, with Plasma 5, it moved into this more of a functionalist perspective. So function comes first. There's not a lot of ornaments. If you look at the theme, it's mostly like simple shapes and so on. And I think what this project also revealed is that there's actually a desire for these sort of non-flat looks, non-flat designs that still captivate people today, you know. And I was just thinking, like, when was the last time that I looked at UI design and said, "Oh, wow, this is impressive. This is fancy." Even if you might not like it, but you can appreciate that it's trying to do something that isn't just like, you know, a very serious, clean looks. Because there's a lot of designs that you come and you say, okay, this is well done, this is clean. But with Oxygen, I think it offers this other part. It tries to elicit some emotional response in you.
Yeah, I think ever since like Google started rolling out their sort of material design language, there was this big shift towards, you know, before that you had a lot of skeuomorphism, and I can understand why there was a shift away from that. Skeuomorphic design, icons are expensive to make when you're doing really complex icons. Completely understandable. But I don't think you have to go from one extreme all the way to the other. I think there is somewhere along that continuum where you can still have this interesting expression and really play around with UI concepts. So when I first saw Oxygen, I thought, okay, this is neat, but the more that I look at it, the more it grows on me, right? Like, when I first started using, my first home computer, I'd use, you know, computers at school and stuff before that. My first home computer, it was Vista, and Oxygen is designed in that similar sort of era. It has a lot of Vista sort of, a lot of aero sort of elements to it. Obviously, it's a very different kind of design, but it elicits that same sort of idea where you have this like glow to these UI elements. There's this sheen to them. Things feel kind of, I guess, metallic in a way. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but there's depth to the elements. It feels like there's light shining off of them. I personally am really starting to really vibe with it.
Yeah, I think just what you said, it's interesting. And the same thing is like, for instance, if you look at buildings, you look at new modernist buildings, they're boxy, usually gray, white, and so on. If you look at these old buildings and you look at all of these ornaments, it tends to be something that does captivate your attention. And I think that's the same with Oxygen. Obviously, it is a product of its time, and if you look at some things, you wouldn't quite design it that way
Right,
today.
sure.
But I think it still looks good as a whole. That it's coherent, and I think there also might be yes, this nostalgia element. Just we all grew up with Windows Vista, Windows 7. We're pretty impressed by this Aero design. But I have to mention that the lead designer, Nuno Pinheiro, who's also been working on this, has been great to actually get in touch with the man himself. He says it wasn't really inspired by that. It was its own thing. It is an articulation of its time, but it
Right.
wasn't. They were doing their own thing. Yeah.
Sure, I don't think it's, trying to be a clone of Vista. It's obviously not trying to be that. If you look at it, it's very clearly its own thing. But contemporary design of the time was more in line with what Oxygen is, right? It's when everything else at that time has this similar sort of design language, it makes sense it's going to share some of those similar sorts of ideas.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And what you said about, like, for instance, with icons is also an important aspect, because now when we're working with Nuno and you see how much work it is to actually create a skeuomorphic icon. It is, and you can create a symbolic, like one of those monochrome icons, really fast. But it really takes its skill, and it takes a lot of time. Yeah.
Yes, so, okay, on the second post, you had some of the icon examples. Yeah, I am looking at the dolphin example. Yeah, that I can see the problem. Or what's the compass used for?
Compass is actually used for the places icon in the panel. So right now, if you switch to Oxygen icons, you get a mismatch. And that's another big topic that actually came up, is how do we fix them up? Because it's also sort of not a complete experience. If you have a colorful icon here, a monochrome icon there, it just looks unpolished. And this is a result of many things. One thing is that in Plasma 6, Plasma themes can't ship icons anymore, right? So if you're using them in the panel, you're now relying completely on the icon theme. So the icon theme now has to pull all of this weight. And the thing with Oxygen is that it reserves these regular icon names. So for instance, I don't know, places or whatever, application/menu for colorful icons. And in Plasma code, you have this mix of code that's calling regular icons and symbolic icons. And in Breeze, in effect, they're all monochrome, so it's not a problem. But with Oxygen, you get this mismatch. But with Plasma 6.7, that's also something we've been working on, and that a lot of progress has been made. So when Oxygen icons gets released, I should maybe say that it's on its own release cycle. So there's KDE frameworks, and probably I think the latest version is 6.25. But Oxygen icons is going to be 6.2. And it's going to come around like Plasma 6.7 time. And then once you update on Plasma 7, because we needed to make changes to Plasma code, you'll get a much, much better experience. So things should be consistent, like all of the icon types.
So what sort of state were the icons in? Like, you mentioned that there was this like symbolic mismatch. If you had tried to just use the Oxygen icons as it is, like, could you even use them? Like, was there anything, like, was it just so different that it just couldn't be done like initially?
You could use them, but there was this issue with mismatch, symbolic, non-symbolic, and then for every icon that doesn't exist in Oxygen, you got to fall back to Breeze. So you also get a mix with Breeze icons that didn't obviously feel quite, it's a completely different style.
Right.
So this was the main thing here, was just adding some of these missing icons to Oxygen. Some of them were also low resolution. So this was also been work with trying to provide bigger PNG sizes. But the most important thing is for Plasma code, and this is why it's great to be a part of the KDE community, is because we can communicate with fellow developers. I asked, does this make sense for you? Can we change the code so it's symbolic? And sure, they said yes, and everyone's always glad to help out. Oxygen really benefits from in that sense from being a part of this ecosystem.
You mentioned the icons were small. Were the source files for the icons still around?
Yes, so you have so Oxygen is different in the sense that it has SVG sources, but then it just renders them as PNGs at different sizes. According to Nuno Pinheiro, the idea here is that it's cheaper to render PNGs than do SVG rendering.
Okay,
So sometimes some icons were rendered at, I don't know, 30.32, but you have this place that wants 64 by 64, and what does it do? It just uses 32 by and upscales it, and then you get a blurry look. So that's one of the issues. But something wonderful that happened is that we also got some new contributors. One of them is Pravin Kumar, who has been really of tremendous help here, locating these sort of places and sending in patches as well. So I think really by 6.7, this is going to be so much better.
So obviously you've got people that are sort of interested in helping out here, but when you first announced that you were going to be doing this, what was that initial response like? Obviously I saw the post, and personally I was excited. I saw people in my comment section like, oh, this is cool. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but I think this is neat and I hope it goes well. But, you know, being involved in the project, like what was that response like, and did you expect any sort of response?
Well, I had initially asked, also in some of the KDE groups, would it be all right to restore this theme? And no one really said anything. And then I restored it, and there was some thumbs down, some comments. Yeah. But I realized what the mistake here was. It was my mistake because I came in and I hadn't been active in KDE for a few years. And then I came in, restored something that is extra maintenance. Then I didn't say, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to fix it up.
Right.
And then from the point of view of people that are really overworked, because I know how much they work, this just looks like something, the extra work that they're going to get because someone merged something like that. So I think I just should have communicated it better. But once I, set the whole thing up as a project, the response has become so much more positive. If you look at the issues tasks on KDE and Ven, it has a lot of thumbs up, and the reactions on the internet have been just amazing. So it's just great to see.
Yeah, I did see that initial sort of like, I don't know if it was like, it wasn't anger, right? It wasn't anger within KDE. I think you are right there. It's just like, why are you doing this? This just doesn't make any sense. Like, this is just like the theme's broken. Like, why are you even trying, right? And I get it.
Yeah, I totally get that point, but it's actually been a lot more useful to merge the theme, even if it wasn't great, and then to work on it as opposed to working on it on one person's computer, because then everyone else can see the code. Other people chimed in. They can send in their own merge requests. They don't have to know you, be in touch with you. So this has been much more useful than the alternative would have been to sort of work on it perhaps on my own computer, but this I think is going pretty well, yeah.
If I recall correctly, there was a similar sort of response with Plasma Big Screen when a bunch of developers started working on that. I don't know if you even paid attention to that. It's like a smart TV interface that KDE was doing years ago, and someone was like, okay, I'm just going to come along and I'm just going to sort of work on this. And it was in a, even when it got initially ported over to Plasma 5, it never really finished its design intentions to begin with. So it was sort of porting half-finished designs, and it very much like Oxygen was like, there's a lot of work here. Are you gonna like actually get the work done and not just like throw this on the people who are already, busy doing other things?
That's the whole point, because I know I'd been active in the KDE community before. I was at one sprint, and I know how some of these people really have a lot on their plate and they don't need anything extra. So if you're coming in with something new, yeah, it's expected of you. You're going to finish the work and maintain it afterwards, not just leave.
So that's
because the bug reports come in and someone has to solve them, right?
For sure. So that's sort of the response like within KDE, but like from just regular KDE users, people that saw the theme being worked on, and like what sort of response did you get from that?
Wow, just so overwhelmingly positive, especially with your video and looking at all of the comments below. Like obviously you get people that like these themes and want to use them. If people aren't that interested, they're not going to comment. So okay, there's a little bit of a bias there, but it's so many nice comments and people being happy and saying they can't wait for 6.7. And to me, that's what makes this worth it.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to actually like give it a proper test, and I I hope it's like, I'm sure there's gonna be something that breaks. There's always something that breaks no matter what's being done, especially when you're porting something this old. But from what I've seen, it seems like it's already shaping up to be in a relatively good state.
Right. I would say that about 80 to 90% things are okay. Like even if looking at the window decorations, app style, icon theme, plasma themes, right now in master KDE, I think they're pretty usable at this point. You don't get any like big glitches. There was some definite issues with the window decorations. If you've tried Oxygen, you got these weird tilted backgrounds, transparent, and just like really things that stab you in the face and make it look like it's not it's not polished, but it's been worked on. One thing that's important here is plasma switching Wayland, and scaling works different there. So on X11, the Oxygen app style, it scales fine, but with Wayland you get some glitches. Like there's still some things left to fix, like some handles in the sliders, for instance.
Like
so
in sound settings, things like that.
Yeah, that's actually part of the plasma theme. That's fine. But the plasma theme, although it wasn't really maintained, like from a development point of view, it's not that big of a deal in the sense that you solve these SVGs and then you should be set. It's not like something should break. So, but with this more fragile code, more complex code, like application style, which is really complex and hard to work on, and window decorations here, it's something that does require more maintenance.
Something I think would be useful, just so people sort of have a better understanding, is what are the pieces of like a theme? Like, how does all of this fit together? What are the different parts that all need to sort of align to make it look correct?
All right, so this is this big topic of theming in KDE, which is right now it's fragmented. You have these. I'm not sure what the official terminology is. Plasma styles, maybe it used to be desktop themes, plasma themes, whatever. This is these SVG based components theming system. That's one thing. Then you have the Q widgets. These are mostly old native Qt apps. Then that has the app style, which is the most complex part of theming. Just one file, which is Oxygen style, is 8,000 lines of code. That's just one file, and it's really not the easiest code. And people don't like working on that.
What is the code written in?
C++.
Oh.
But it's a special like QPainter code. It's challenging. And then you have window decorations. That's also C++. And you also have to style theme the Qt quick parts, which aren't the Plasma theme, but it's like some apps like Discover. That's another thing which right now is working, picking up the application style theme, but not 100%. With Oxygen, if you use it, you don't get the window gradient, for instance. So it's really complex, lots of pieces that need to fall into place here.
Yeah, I can understand why this might be causing problems then. But before you took on this project, I am assuming you'd done some theming before? Unless this is the first thing you hopped into?
No, not quite. I was active in KDE, mostly in VDG. It was around the end of 2010s. So not the first thing. And I did a little bit of design as well as a hobby when I was younger. So it wasn't completely new. And I also learned a little bit of programming, not so much the C++ part, but the QML, that one's really approachable.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets me by. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's obviously a lot of design Actually, we'll start with that. There's obviously a lot of design language changes that have happened from 4 up to Plasma 6, and I'm assuming some of that stuff doesn't necessarily entirely map, and this has probably led to some... I'm assuming there's areas where things that were done in KDE 4 are no longer possible in Plasma 6. At least as the code was already written.
100% correct. Even if you look at Plasma themes, if you grab a theme from KDE4, you can delete at least a dozen SVGs because it's not applicable. Like, I don't know if should I go into all the details, but for instance, in KDE4,
go into as many details you want.
You could put some sort of a texture behind the label that's on the desktop. So you had dark text, and then there was some sort of a glow behind it. That thing's not possible anymore. And then I think what's important to say is with the air and oxygen plasma themes, they're not going to be one-to-one replicas of what they were, precisely because of these technical changes. For instance, the blur effect isn't quite the same. It works differently nowadays, and you can't replicate quite the looks that you had then. Plus, like with the air theme, if you looked at it in KDE4, it was super transparent, but it had no blur on desktop widgets, which things have changed today. If you look at contrast standards, it might fail the contrast standard. And
I'm
that
looking at it
doesn't fly
now.
as much today.
So some things had blur, but not... That's weird. So like the calendar didn't have blur, but there's like I'm looking at the first blog post. There's a thing that says the folder is empty, and that seems to have blur on it.
Right, I think the panel had blur, but the desktop widgets were missing blur, I think.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure, but that's just one example of an infrastructural change. Then there's a bunch of things that were missing in these oxygen air themes. If you look at margin separators, so this thing was added in Plasma, so you can make, I don't know, your system tray a bit smaller, so it's not as big as the other icons. There's this adaptive opacity thing, like if you maximize your window, your panel becomes less transparent. So all of these features weren't supported by these themes, and the idea was let's add these features. One of them was also these headers and footers. You see them in Kickoff, the application launcher. That thing existed in sort of a different way in KDE4. I think it wasn't actually QML. I think it was actually like this native code. But now we added it to Air because we thought it looked cool, but it wasn't something that's quite the same as it was in KDE4. But at the same time, you don't want to change the design. Yeah.
Right. So when you come across these things where you sort of have to make a choice, how do you sort of go about deciding which direction you go, whether you want it to be more in line with oxygen or, like there's obviously going to be places where there's like a diverging path, right? How do you sort of decide on which path to go?
Well, I have an easy solution here. Just ask the oxygen lead designer, Nuno Pinheiro, who's around, and I always ask him what he thinks, and I think his opinion has a lot of weight because he designed it. He knew what the idea behind it was. So whenever there's something like that, we try to consult with him. Yeah, but the general idea is let's keep the design similar. Let's not alter this. Let's not do something new, but let's just fix it up so it looks good and doesn't have any bugs.
So it's oxygen applied to Plasma 6. It's not turning Plasma 6 into KDE 4. I guess a good way to look at it.
Right. That's that's one way. Yeah.
Because there's like, with this being something that's not necessarily, a core theme to Plasma at this point, there's only so much you can do. You can't really make fundamental sweeping code changes to Plasma 6 just to sort of enhance this theme. There are things that might make sense to also add to Plasma 6 that happen to benefit this, but there's a framework you need to work within because Breeze is the core focus now.
Yeah, obviously, when sending in patches, it can downgrade the Breeze experience. It has to make sure the default experience stays untouched. And then if this can also work well with Oxygen, which has been the case with several patches we've been sending in, then there's no issues. Or maybe even adding some new features. For instance, we're thinking with the icons. Some users say they don't want these monochrome icons in their system tray. They want colorful icons. But technologically, we're limited right now with giving them the option. So we're thinking of why not have an option in the icon theme as well that you can click, okay, I want colorful icons there. But that's something we need to implement on the Plasma side as well.
So I guess long term with this theme, what do you want it to be, and where do you want to see it go?
I think it's fine for KDE to offer multiple themes for some time now. It's been offering one that was the default, and maybe in Plasma 5 you could say the Oxygen was also being offered, but this old Oxygen, I think it's always going to have a market as a sort of vintage look that some users are interested in. You know, when you always go to these Rising subreddits or whatever, there's always someone with these retro looks. So I think it's always going to have its market. I don't know how quite big it is, but I think there is one. Then you have the default look, which is supposed to be this professional, really polished, clean look. And I think there's room for one more theme, which would be really out there, really try to do something that really tries to wow you, even if it might be risky and not liked by everyone. But a big topic here is also this technological infrastructure, what's going to happen with that, because we've gotten into this. Right now, theming is pretty complex in KDE, as probably, there's this project of KDE Union, where you have something that can ingest for now it's CSS, and then applies the theming everywhere, which is a brilliant idea and would make life easier for everyone. For theming, it just needs to reach feature parity, right? Because you could, as tiring it is and as hard it is to work on this, for instance, C++ code, it's still very powerful.
I feel like every time I have someone on who's involved in anything KDE design, the topic of Union comes up. And it's a really important topic because, as you've described, theming in Plasma, theming in the KDE ecosystem is difficult. And, I get why there's this sort of desire to unify something, this desire to try and do something about the problem, because it's been a problem for a long time, and it's a problem that seems to only get worse over time because, maybe you had one or two things at one point, and then, QML comes along at some point, and then you have all of these other little things, and did we disconnect? We good? Hello? You're... Hello?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay.
You're still frozen? Okay.
Okay. Sorry. What did you last hear?
Just go over the last half minute.
Okay. I was basically just saying that as
everyone talks about Union. And...
Yeah. Okay, sweet. The problem sort of KDE theming has only gotten worse over the years. There's been additional ways of doing theming added, and I get it, right? Like, there's the problem that exists within KDE is there's not like a dedicated push for one system. This is one of the things I think GNOME does do in a way that makes life simpler for everyone, right? They have the GNOME design, they have the way of doing it in GNOME, and that's the way it's being done. Whereas KDE, there's 5 different diverging things, and everything somehow magically works together. There's been a lot of work to make it work together, but it's a complex mess for anyone who wants to build something on top of that.
Right, and this happens in practice. So if you go and look, what do you have the most of? Usually it's plasma themes because this is the easiest. To many people edit some SVGs and you have a bunch of plasma themes. Then I guess SDDM things have been a thing now. This has been deprecated, so theming of the login manager. But if you go and look at the application style, man, there's just so few of them because it's too complex. Usually they just then use, I don't know, Breeze and then modify the color slightly. But if you want to do like whole
On the
scale
KDE
theming,
store, there is 12.
12.
12.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's a difficult topic because now you have all this third party ecosystem. And what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to delete this? I'm pretty sure that a lot of users would be mad at this. So it's a big topic. Yeah. I'm not sure how it's going to develop, but it's super important for theming in the future.
I think any sort of major breaking change there would have to come at like a new major release of Plasma, so a Plasma 7 or anything like that. But even so, right, there is this mentality, as you said, within Plasma of wanting this power to be there, and it's a difficult problem to fix. And I think Union is sort of the least controversial way to approach the problem because it doesn't break any of the existing ways of doing theming. If you still want to do the older ways that get very deep into the weeds, you can do that. But for building something in a considerably simpler way, there is something that is easier to work with.
Right, and that's the question here: is Union going to exist alongside the existing theming option, or is it going to try to eventually replace them so you don't have these anymore? Which I don't know the answer to yet. But from what I want to say is that it's really important that if it does try to replace, that it has to match the theming power that the current system offers.
Yeah, I do completely agree there. I think there is Plasma's had this sort of legacy of theming for so long now, and people look at this as this, like, this, even though it's complex, this, like, beacon of what you can do. You know, you can build something that looks like basically identical to Windows 7 if you really want to, or Windows 95, or any version of OS X, or anything else you can think of. And if that power wasn't there, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people within Plasma who would miss it as well, who maybe Breeze is, you know, it's the focus, but, you know, for people outside of the design group, right, you know, they're going to play around with other things. They're going to maybe they like the Plasma functionality, but not necessarily the look, right? So something I really like about Plasma is there is this sort of, I guess, large diversity of opinions on what the correct direction to take things in actually is.
Yeah, and I think that's fine if we're united in this diversity. And KDE is a great community in the sense that you oftentimes do come across people you don't necessarily agree with, but none of these people have any bad intentions, and you have to try to understand their point. Like with, for instance, this negative reaction to restoring air, for instance, you know, we could just say, you know, they meant something bad by it, but they didn't. You have to understand their point of view.
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. So what is the current state of things? Like, what's been done? What still needs to be worked on?
For oxygen,
oxygen,
and
yes. Oxygen.
Oxygen and air. So the plasma themes are, a lot of things have already been fixed. Like with oxygen, it was so bad, really, that maybe it shouldn't even have been shipped. It was really, really buggy. Like, for instance, there's the panel situation. I couldn't believe this. I use a bottom panel, though I guess like, I got used to it. But
floating
with the
or
design,
attached to the bottom?
Sorry, attached to the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And if with the oxygen plasma theme, if you it's designed directionally, so it's a glow that comes from below.
Hmm.
And if you move your panel up, it would still be a glow coming from below. If you moved it vertically, it would switch into just one weird line glow in the middle that goes from the bottom to the top, because the design wasn't at all taking into account panel orientations.
Mm-hmm.
So these sort of things, and then oxygen tasks as well. There's a little line underneath, and again a glow that goes from below. All of this needed adjusting. First, it was the bug fixing, like with the color scheme, making sure there's no like light text on light background and so on. And then we looked at adding these features. So the panel has been revamped. It supports this adaptive opacity and margin separators. With Air, we actually added all the components for adaptive opacity, but it's not turned on right now because Air relies a lot on transparency, and when it goes into a fully opaque state, it just doesn't look really great. I mean, but the files are there. If users are going to want to use this, they can just add one line to the Plasma RC theme file. They can use adaptive opacity. With Air, there was actually not a lot of bugs to fix. If you go, and I have a virtual machine of KDE4, and I just stole the theme files from there. If you apply it to modern day Plasma, it still works. It's not unusable at all. Oxygen is all kinds of broken, but Air actually works. And here it was just a matter of fixing like some squished elements. The search bar was way too short. The view items were squished and so on. And then the rest was just about adding the features, like also margin separators, for instance, that it supports blur. One big thing here was the Air of Plasma 5 really wasn't representative of old Air because it wasn't transparent enough. And to get there, this was an interesting journey. We obviously dialed down increased the transparency, added blur, but then we saw like some weird smudging around edges. And this is where the KDE veteran Marco Martin really helped us and patched this up. So the current look is pretty good. It's not one-to-one replica of KDE4, but I think users are gonna like it.
One of the things I see on the brainstorming list is consider having these themes support accent color. What's that about?
Yeah, I mean, if you use Oxygen and Air, it's just blue. It has blue as an accent color.
Right.
There's this one ice blue, and then there's like a darker blue. And let's say you want your whole system to be, I don't know, pink colored or green colored, and Oxygen doesn't support this right now. So this is something that we should, and I think we will add by 6.7. Just so if you have a blue glow, that it's if you use a pink accent color, it's going to be pink. That's another modern feature that is probably expected of most themes nowadays. It wasn't the case like maybe 15 years ago, but now it is.
Right, this kind of goes into the additional functionality added since then, and it's something that you expect to be working, right? Like the option is there in the KDE setting, so if it doesn't do what you expect, then that just feels wrong.
Sorry, what do you mean about which part?
Oh, not having the accent color, right? If the accent color doesn't behave like you'd expect it to, if, you know, you set it and then it's like, oh, you highlight text in a browser and it's using the accent color, but then it's not using it in the actual, you know, interface, it doesn't align with what you expect from, you know, using Breeze, for example.
Right, and this is, you know, what happens sometimes in practice is that bug reports come in for regular Plasma, where actually something that like Oxygen bugs. So that's another part of the maintenance thing. So if this is properly maintained, works right, that doesn't happen. Yeah, but it should be. If your accent color is maybe generated from the wallpaper as well, or completely dynamic, and you want to see this in the theme as well. There's also been some users that wanted the whole theme to be tinted, like, you know, if you use a background color in your application style that's, I don't know, yellowish, that the whole Plasma theme should be tinted, but that's not something we're looking at right now, at least for 6.7. Maybe it's sort of an option, or yeah, there's been a lot of comments by users, and we're reading all of them and trying to find ways to make everyone happy.
That's something I think would be really, really cool. I don't know how much complexity it adds to the theme itself, but it would be really neat.
Yeah, I guess I see the appeal of it, but at the same time, in all these conversations with Nuno Pinheiro and also some other folks that joined in the group and have been sending some links about the history, there was some sort of an idea, I think, that oxygen is like a black gemstone or something like
Hmm.
that, and then air is what was it, like glass. So if it's like supposed to be a black gemstone and then it's like a yellow one, maybe it's not quite what they had in mind, but that's what options are for, and we'll look into this.
Mm-mm.
We can also, for instance, for oxygen cursors, you have some extra cursors in the repo right now, but it's not installed by default. So this could be done for other things. Like some people have been asking about classical design. Like, the old oxygen panel was gradient. It was very 2009. Some people want this look.
Mm-mm.
And I mean, we can't ship like 2, 3 oxygen themes, but maybe we could leave it around in the repo or upload it to the KDE store. So if people want this look, so they can use it.
Right, you have to kind of like make decisions about what the core look is going to be, and any additional things you add to it are going to add additional complexity to it. And I totally get wanting to sort of, at least for the initial release, really define the scope of what you're trying to do. And from there, you can play around with ideas. If something works, if something doesn't, like, you can always make those decisions later down the line.
Exactly, and that's in pipeline for 6.8, and then when users install 6.7, they can experience this theme and they can file bug reports. So we'll also see the user feedback there and then.
Mhm. So if somebody wants to go and like play around with it right now, what is the easiest way to go and do so?
Depends if you're a KDE developer, you just do KDE Builder Oxygen. It compiles the whole repo. If you're a regular user and you're on some point release, or I don't know, Plasma 6.5, 6.6, you can download the theme files that I have in the blog post and install them locally. There might be some bugs because, like for instance, switches were broken before 6.63.
Mhm.
I think this is actually what I wanted to say is an advantage when you have other themes that are somewhere in the system, is you see some things that they might work well with Breeze, but then another theme exposes that it doesn't work right. And that
Mm.
was the case with the switch. There was actually something being drawn underneath the switch, but you didn't see this in Breeze because the handle goes over the switch, right?
Aha. So
Yeah.
I see. So there was sort of like a mistake or a hack done with Breeze, and it's just something that nobody really noticed because Breeze looked correct.
It's an honest mistake with the components code where just, you test it with Breeze and you didn't see that, if you remove the big handle, if you want to do a slider that's inside the groove, it's not going to look right.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Right.
if users want to test this, these files are available. It's I would say like 80, 90% done, but should be usable.
Mhm.
There's some things to work out, like users may notice that air has a lot of spacing with task items. Like they're really spaced apart, and oxygen they're more close together. There's something to also to synchronize a bit better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So have you ever like I don't know if this was around or not. Have there been other, I guess, themes inspired by Oxygen or other attempts to revive it as like less official things that just somebody sort of playing around with the idea?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that because when we were getting into this project, we actually saw a lot of third party like forks, repos, people doing really good stuff. And we were just contacting all of them asking, hey, why don't you upstream this? Why not benefit the official Oxygen package?
Mhm.
So there is actually one person who was working on the Oxygen like Qt Quick style, so that it applies to all of these like apps like Discover, for instance. So you get the gradient in the background. From what I know, it wasn't quite finished,
Hmm.
and the person said it wasn't in a state to be upstream. But like for people working on forks of the oxygen theme, if you have any fixes for them, like for instance with the accent color or something, just send in a patch, and it benefits everyone really. Yeah.
Mm-mm. So, how many people at this point are kind of messing around with the theme? Because you mentioned you have like the person who was like the core designer of Oxygen involved in this, but how many other people are involved? And what are different people working on?
Nuno Pinheiro, so he was the lead designer for Oxygen. He's doing so much work with Oxygen icons right now. He's produced, like, I don't have the number, but it's insane. If you look at the commit history, he's just generated so many, especially symbolic icons, so everything falls into place. And then he's helped by Pravin Kumar, who's also, I think we also found was someone who had a fork, his own repo,
Hmm.
and he really fixed a lot of things up, especially with icons. And then he already had the know-how. He knew what needed to be fixed, and he sent in these patches. This was brilliant. And now, one of the biggest excitements I get these days is when I rebuild Oxygen icons and I see, oh, this has been fixed. That's been fixed.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, there's this Telegram group, and there's also some other folks there that comment. Some might also join in with patches, but we also have these seasoned KDE developers that help around a lot. So it's a small group, I would say, but we get the job done because
Mm-mm.
a lot of this work has already been done, and I'm the face that's in front of you, but so many more people have contributed more
Mm-mm.
to Oxygen. And especially, like, I would point out these KDE developers for Plasma 5, Plasma 6, because they just did so quietly, you know.
Mm-mm. Actually, I'm kind of curious specifically about Nuno Pinheiro. Like, when you started working on this, like, how did you contact him beforehand? Did you realize he was the one who had done the work? What was his sort of response to you wanting to bring this work back?
But yeah, I had of course known of him. I knew he was sort of in my mind. It was this design legend of KDE. I knew he was the lead designer for Oxygen. I saw him in some of the groups like the Visual Design Room from time to time, popped in, but never actually had a real chance to speak to them, work with them. Then what happened is when I started submitting these patches, and especially when I restored Air, and Nuno commented below, I would like to help with this. And then I got in touch. Hey, what do you have in mind? And then joined the group. And ever since then, it's been amazing, really. Also, a beautiful thing that came out of this is to get a chance to work with him and see how it does this. For instance, he's working on a camcorder icon these days. And when you see him, how he constructs all of these complex pieces of it, it's truly amazing.
That's awesome. No, that is definitely really cool. I honestly, it's cool to see someone who's just excited about working on just a neat theme like this, right? It's not something that most people are going to like switch to, right? I don't think it's gonna be this, you know, sudden design interest shift where everyone wants to shift back to the Oxygen look, but I do think that it is a really cool theme, and I do like the fact that this is being brought into the modern era of Plasma and being something where even if it's something you just want to like try out and see, okay, what were they going for? And it's not exactly the same, but what were they going for with KDE4 and do I like this, right? Do I see something here? And I think something interesting is as a example for the people in KDE design, are there things that maybe we've gone too far with minimalism? Is there something we can learn from the work that we had done in the past that we can use to improve the design of Breeze today? Because I know there is certainly some interest within the design group to play around with some things in Breeze and improve some things. Like there's ideas that are always floating around, and knowing what you've done in the past can sort of, I guess, direct you for what to do in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Breeze is at this moment pretty much more or less frozen, and it's going to be replaced by the Ocean theme.
Right, yeah,
So
sorry. Yeah, Ocean. Forgot about that one.
Ocean, yeah, sort of its successor, but not an iteration, but it's its own thing. Yeah, I think also this, as I said, this positive reaction to oxygen. I think there's really a sizable amount of users who want these non-flat looks, maybe some glows, gradients, some depth, or whatever.
Mm-mm.
I don't think it's going to go back to to what it was, obviously, but it's in a weird sort of mixture state right now. Like you have this, for instance, what's the trend of liquid glass. It
Mm-mm.
does evoke that time, but again, it's its own thing. Then, for instance, material design, it seems to be more in this flat still trend. But yeah, I think these old themes they're useful, and the fact that people like them, I think, yeah, we can. It could be some of the things could be adapted for future themes.
Mm. On the topic of liquid glass, I know a lot of people had a very like negative reception to it, and I think there were definitely a lot of problems with it, with like contrast and things like that. The early looks of it were pretty rough, especially if you're using it on a light theme. It just, I don't think they really fully tested it before they let people play around with it, and that gave a very bad reception to it.
Right, because I also think times have changed. Back it was like I don't know 2008, and I don't know, maybe I don't remember, but people weren't firing up contrast checkers as much. I think there's a lot more sensitivity to accessibility these days.
Mm,
So if you
mm.
get legible text, I don't think some of the designs, like if you look at, especially from that Arrow era, they were super transparent, and then the text is a little bit hard to read. I don't think this can fly as any sort of default offering anymore. I'm not that acquainted with liquid glass, but from what I saw, the issue was, for instance, that like all of the icons turned to the same color. So you have on your phone, and there were colorful icons, and you could use these colors to locate your app, and if it's all the same color, from a usability point of view. Although I do think it looks cool. It's one
Hmm.
of those like latest designs that at least I might not, co-sign it completely, but I'm intrigued by it. I
Right.
stop and look at it, just like at an old building, and you look at the weird faces on the facade.
Right. It felt like for a long time, designers were kind of afraid to try out anything, right? It was like, this is the design language, everything's flat, everything's a single color, and even if it's not something everyone vibes with, I like the fact that they at least are trying something and
Mhm.
trying to like diverge from what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I completely agree. Yeah.
You brought up the topic of accessibility there. I'm actually kind of curious, like, what issues have cropped up there with Oxygen. And obviously, nowadays, caring about contrast and making sure the text is readable is a really important thing. And as we saw with, some of the design choices with Air, you would not design it today, right? There was a lot of light text on light backgrounds that just would not fly with any modern design.
Yeah, but there was actually some more variants of Air, which I discovered. There was like this initial one that had these sort of even circles in backgrounds, if you look at the widget backgrounds. And then there was a version called Air Netbook, which was pretty much Air, but it had some sort of a gradient in the panel and so
Mhm.
on. But some versions, and you see this in the screenshots, were pretty transparent. And in these plasma themes, you have this, I think, SVG file, translucent background, and someone in the comments somewhere asked, can we restore this? I mean, no, like from technological point of view, not just even if we're talking about contrast, but I don't know a way to restore this sort of extreme transparency without making everything else transparent. Like there's not an extra checkbox for make it extra transparent.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what is the sort of release plans for this? You mentioned a couple of times Plasma 6.7. Um, I guess like when can people expect this to be not maybe 100% done, but something that is ready to play around with?
I think 6.7 is absolutely the goal.
Mm.
That's going to be the milestone, and then after 6.7, it's a matter of tweaking things to based on user input if they want something a little bit different, something extra. I think, but I think in 6.7 it's going to be completely. It's going to look presentable. It's going to look shouldn't look bugged anymore.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Sure.
pretty soon, yeah. There's 2 months left, but the development window, there's a soft freeze that's comes at the end of April, and then if you add some strings, you also have to keep this in mind. So development-wise, not too much time left. For bug fixes, there's always that can always go in.
Mhm.
But like for big features and something that we're also looking at is to create an Air global theme, look and feel theme. I don't know what it's called these days, and maybe offer some new color schemes as well.
Mm.
Right now you have Oxygen Cold. These are pretty vintage. Maybe offer Oxygen Dark as well. It's a dark theme.
Mm.
I don't know if people use like light apps themes and dark panel themes these days. I'm under the impression that they use it in sync.
Mm. Mm.
And maybe a color scheme for Air as well, like a light one.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know anyone who I didn't even know you could mix them. Can you still mix them? Like have a light panel and a dark applications?
Yeah, you get plasma theme that's hard coded,
Oh.
so to speak, in dark color,
Mm.
and then you use a color scheme that's light. You can do it. You can do it with Oxygen now. I don't personally do it. I don't see the point, like
Mm.
aesthetically or the usability wise, but there might be a subset that does this. But this was in KDE 4 with Oxygen. The default color scheme is light, and then the panel was dark. Not in the case of Air,
Mm.
but you didn't have Oxygen dark. You had these these plethora of themes called Honeycomb, Norway, Wonton Soup, Obsidian Coast that have been deprecated since.
Okay, so there was a lot more of a continuum of like what did some of those look like, I guess?
Oh wow, some of them were really out there. I can send in a link somewhere because there's also actually if you go to the Oxygen repo, there's a merge request with some even older color schemes. And some of them I think are even like green, like Matrix, like it was it was a different time. It was a time like you remember, like a lot of things could fly that couldn't quite today. It was more playful though, and
I
that's what I
guess
like about
that
it.
probably would have been around the time that Steam had the green theme. So I guess it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, there's some of them are like ordinary,
Mm.
like by today's standards, but some of them like I think Honeycomb was like something extra orangey with the
Mm.
highlight. Um, they're pretty interesting, and there's actually a link somewhere. I think it's in the merge request as well. That describes there's actually a story behind them. It's not just a color scheme, but it's like an obsidian coast, and we wanted to show this and that with it. It's very interesting. I think that's something we've been missing, especially that we lost in the 2010s and we still haven't returned. Is this sort of a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of charm,
Mm.
personality? Like, don't maybe like do the clippies that pop out or the candles or the conkies, whatever, but just a little something, quirky here and there could be useful.
Right, yeah, for a long time it's really been this you have the white theme and you have the black theme. And that's kind of all that was there. And if you go back to even if you go back to like XP, right? You had the gradient in the file manager, like the blue ribbon thing. Like there was more to the design. You had wasn't the was the panel blue back then on Windows? I don't remember. There was definitely a lot more usage of color, and I think moving into this material design, moving to this flat design, there has been a shift away from that. I think a big part of that is because of accessibility, because you really want to care, you really want to matter that like contrast is important. That's sorry, I'm tripping on my words. Contrast is important, and the easiest way to handle that is black text, white background, white text, black background. That's going to give you your contrast requirements. It's also a naturally good-looking design, right? You can tint the dark gray a little bit blue, and now you have this modern, like, metallic design, and it looks nice. But doing something outside of that, actually having a color scheme that uses color that actually looks good is really difficult, and you really need to understand color theory to make that work.
Yeah, it is. It's super difficult. And I think, again, this topic. It's okay, let's have a default look, offer the white dark experience, but it's KDE. You can also offer this extra options. If someone wants to use them, they can choose to use them. But yeah, I haven't personally myself, like, there's one theme there, a color scheme. It's called Cherry Blossom, I think. And if you apply it in your system and everything is like pink cherry blossom tinted, it looks
wait,
cool.
is that what I saw? Okay, I saw someone using oxygen, and it was tinted all. Is that like what that is? I presume.
Might be. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But design wise, it is hard to pull off today without. But yeah, even like you mentioned Windows XP, but think of Windows 98 and all the themes you could do there. There was something like with textures, even like no one does this anymore. Like add like a wood panel texture in your panel.
Right. Yeah.
Looks weird, but yeah, I think the default look it's still the times we live. It has to remain. It has to be consistent, accessible, whatnot. It can't quite go back to the playfulness levels we saw before, but a little bit I think could be restored.
Well, I don't think you necessarily need to ship the playfulness yourself. I think something that I would expect to happen is once you provide the framework, other people are going to sort of build these third-party things that just, do not fit within Plasma. They're never going to be shipped in a core repo, but build off of the framework that has been provided here and really explore what can be done. Because once you have Oxygen in a state where it's working like it should be with Plasma, now you provide a really good point to fork off of and do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think this whole third-party ecosystem with all that's out there with the broken SDDM themes and whatnot, it's beautiful to me. And that's what makes KDE special. Yeah.
Yeah, the broken themes especially. There's some choices that have been made out there.
The themes that steal your passwords and whatnot.
Maybe not those ones. Keep those ones away. That is a concern with having it. This goes deep. There was the whole how many years ago was it now? I feel like it was only like last year, but there was the whole global theme that did it like delete someone's system? I don't remember what the case was.
Oh, I think it did. Yeah, I think it did. RF on the. It was like, from what I read, it was like something that worked differently in Plasma 5, and then when it was used in Plasma 6, it deleted absolutely everything.
How long ago was this? This was March 20th, 2024. Oh my god, it was a while ago. Okay. I talked about this when it happened. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Yeah, it wasn't malicious. It was just code that had not been ported. Yeah, okay. But like, that is a problem with having themes be built with C++, right? Be built with arbitrary code. There's going to be places where either malicious developers or it's just things have changed a bit. And a great example of this actually is an ancient problem that Steam had where they had a shell script and it ran an RMRF, but it didn't check if the variable it was using was set. So if the variable wasn't set, it ended up just doing an RF on your root, and obviously
Nice.
that went
Yeah.
badly.
Nice. Nice.
It wasn't malicious, right? Like, they were 99% of the time it was fine. The environment variable was set. I think it was related to if you moved your Steam folder, it just it didn't properly set the variable for whatever reason. It was doing it like that, and it just deleted things. But that is the problem with having full programming languages to do things.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. That's what
Mhm.
happens here. It's like SDDM themes or QML, and it's not just just style things with them. There's logic in there, and it's easy to mess this up.
Mhm, mhm.
Especially things change and you don't adjust for the new versions, and then you end up with a broken screen, which is the least of your concerns. I mean, if there's someone stealing your passwords. So I get why they moved from that to Plasma Login Manager. It's a loss for theming though, because you can't theme your login manager anymore.
Oh, you can't?
But
Okay.
SDDM is still around. But I get the security concerns. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, okay, that is kind of sad.
There was cool stuff on the KDE store. I know, yeah,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
can't do that with the new thing.
Well, I think it would be really cool to have the Plasma login, like, from login all the way to using it, having it be that oxygen design. Like, that would be super cool.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no even SDDM theme. There's this called Elerune theme that you might think is Oxygen, but this is actually shipped with SDDM. That was done there in like 2013, hasn't been touched on. Very simple theme. And we can't change this because with SDDM, it's so slow moving. If you send in a patch, this may come out like in 3 years. And then with Plasma Login Manager, you can't theme it. So for the login experience right now, it's not in the ideal state where if you want a really cohesive theme from the login all the way to the minutia, you're in a bit of a pickle.
Hey, if somebody wants to go and fork Plasma Login Manager and do something fun there, hey, that's the fun with open source. Someone can go do so.
Yeah, I think there is supposedly some plan to make it a little bit more themable. It's stylable in the sense that you can apply your icon theme or whatnot, but you can't like rearrange the whole login to be something else if you want.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know, half screen or whatever. That would be QML code. But I'm not fully like knowledgeable about this, so I'm just going off from what I read.
Right. There's definitely things you could do to it that don't involve like full on C++ that would at least provide something there, right? It feels out of place for there to be absolutely nothing, but at the same time, I understand why you would want to do so. And even when it comes to, images, right? There have been cases of weird code exploits with images, and this is a part of the reason why Ubuntu decided to just drop image support in Grub. Like, there are cases where you can do weird things that shouldn't be possible, loading code through an image. It's generally not going to happen, but there's sometimes something weird, right? Bad code can do bad things, right?
Right, yeah. And there's been some examples. It's rare in the Linux world, but it does happen. Yeah, so I get this point, but maybe like then, because obviously the Breeze theme is now what everyone's going to see with Plasma Login Manager. Maybe somehow make the theme itself, the code modal, like adjustable so that it loads certain things based on a theme that can alter them. I don't know. It would require a significant rework of the current theme. I know because I worked on this theme like 7 or 8 years ago. But that might be one way. Like the same way that you load SVGs with Plasma themes that maybe like or set some parameters like, okay, where do I want these avatars to be? Might be doable, but it's a lot of work.
Right, and it's a lot of work that whether or not it's even something they'd want to support in Plasma Login Manager. Like, it's one thing to provide the patches and do it, but again, it's like we were saying before, right? If you're gonna do that, that opens a whole new maintenance vector, and then somebody has to deal with that, and you know, it's messy. You know, code is messy, projects are messy.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, it's also one topic for theming right now. If you want to make the login screen something, you have to use SDDM. It's still around. I think it should be around for a few more years. But also, it was helped out a lot by KDE maintainers as well. So we'll see how it shapes up.
But I think ultimately, like, your first initial step, focusing on getting the theme ready, and then anything from there can continue on from that point, right? Like, there's no point trying to do everything at once before you ship anything.
No. I mean, I think this the way things are laid out for Oxygen now is sane. Just first fix everything up and then see where it goes from there. I mean, like even like on a personal side, I have a day job and I just do this in my free time. So
right.
There's so many. I know, like I have a big task list in my head, and if I went and did that, I have to be doing it all day.
I guess with that, like, when do you decide that things are kind of ready? Like, what is your criteria for that?
Well, you send in these patches, and ideally people test them. They try out what you did and say this is okay. Then that's the first line of testing. Second line is you push it to master. So you have this community of KDE developers that keeps rebuilding their packages. Then they can see if something got messed up because people have different setups. Someone has NVIDIA, someone has AMD, someone uses scaling, someone doesn't. That happens, and then you have these distros that are super fast. That's one way of testing. So it's an iterative process.
But like what I sort of meant there was your criteria for when the theme is ready, right? Like, obviously you want to get it to be done by Plasma 6.7, but there's obviously going to be issues that are more critical than others, right? Like, there are some things where even if it wasn't fixed, it would be kind of fine to just ship it. It's a very minor, subtle issue.
Yeah, it's mostly this is the stuff that's in the domain of what users have been asking, like some extra options, colorful icons and panels, I don't know, tinting all over. But I think the core crucial things are already there.
What bugs kind of exist still with the theme? Like, if somebody was to run it today, you said most of it's pretty much fine, but like, there's clearly still problems.
Yeah, one thing, if someone's tested out the Air theme and you go and do your log out, and all of a sudden the text isn't very legible. That's an issue, but it can be worked around in the Air theme because the logout screen is hard-coded black now, and the Air loads its colors based on the light environment it's in. So it loads the color for button labels, and then it doesn't look good on the logout screen. So the logout screen needs to be patched for legible text with Air, and this isn't just a problem with Air, it's a problem with, if you try switching to Breeze Lite right now. If you're on, I don't know, some 6.6 version and go do a logout, you'll see that the text isn't very legible. Certainly doesn't satisfy any contrast criteria.
I think it's very clear. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's very clear what the default theme for the designers were with Breeze. If there's issues with like Breeze Lite, it's very clear that Breeze Dark was the core focus.
Or just the Breeze default that, I don't know, adjusts itself based on color scheme, because the Breeze Lite is just coded to always be light. So yeah, so people usually test with Breeze, and this is understandable because it takes extra time to cycle through everything. But it is really useful and can be useful not just for other things, but exposing exactly these sort of things that are actually bugs in the code.
And ultimately, like, this is the point of getting something out there. This is the point of like doing user testing, because you're going to have obviously the developers try things out, but the real point where you're going to know that something is wrong is when it's out there and somebody does some weird combination of things that you never thought of testing.
Yeah, and then there's a post on Reddit, and like, you know, this one that was really popular recently was someone was using the oxygen theme, and then they fired up a menu or something, and then it showed that there's two white hard-coded pixels in the shadow. I don't know if you've seen this.
No, I haven't
Then
seen
again,
that.
like, you should, if you sort by most upvoted, it's really up there. Yeah, some things you don't that are there, but you don't necessarily even see.
Is that
It
on
was
the
it was just
KDE Reddit?
yeah.
Let's see. Sort by top, maybe? Maybe I better find it. Probably won't.
In the last month or 2 months.
Oh,
or something.
okay. If it's in the last month or two, I won't be able to find it quickly then.
Yeah.
Unless
Doesn't matter, but
yeah, it doesn't matter.
it was pretty funny, you know, because this is these two little pixels, and then everyone was joking like, "Oh yeah, this is really you should deprecate oxygen. It's too bad, it's so bad, man."
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Again, this is the point of user testing. Something like that, like, you know, it's easy to miss that, right? It's one of those little things where, you know, I kind of get how if you're not if you don't know it's there, you're not going to see it, and especially if you're messing with it constantly, it can be very easy to stop noticing problems.
Exactly. Yeah. And this, I think, the user did even a special test scenario where they put a white background behind it, so like a plain color wallpaper that you don't even do. So some, like with normal wallpapers, you might not even notice some things like bat shadows, or I don't know. Scaling is a big thing where people, if they use different scalings, things can turn out wrong.
Yeah.
And X11 as well. It's still being used by some people. Yeah, and I accidentally was trying to fix some shadows, and accidentally ended up breaking X11, which wasn't a good thing. It's not the whole X11, but like oxygen on X11.
Right.
Because it's still supported. It's going to be until 6.8, I think.
Right. People have different scaling. People have like weird monitor resolutions. You know, I'm sure there's gonna be, you know, if it's not been tested with a super ultra wide, who knows? Maybe if the panel is like this long, something weird happens with the rendering.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Usually, I think a lot of these experiences, but that KDE developers come across is with NVIDIA and AMD, like these differences, proprietary drivers and so on. That can be really also tough to track down.
From my
maybe even someone.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, sorry. If someone's using it like on a tablet, or I don't know, anything like a touchscreen, something doesn't work, and I don't have a touchscreen here, and I didn't test with that. So.
Not what I was going to mention, but I guess it is relevant there. Plasma Mobile.
Plasma Mobile. Oxygen, I think. I'm not sure if that's supported.
Okay,
I don't work on Plasma Mobile, but I actually saw that someone made an Android theme, ported Oxygen as an Android theme for some launcher. If you go look at Oxygen on Reddit or Android or something, I think it was someone managed to do it, and it actually looked cool. I liked it.
Okay, there's another thing. Okay, there's like, oh, where is this it? Yeah, okay, I found it. That's actually kind of sick.
Yeah.
This guy needs to charge his phone. He's at 23%, but no, that actually is super cool. Maybe I'll have to play around with that. I don't know. But what I was gonna say is one of the areas where I've noticed that problems appear, and I don't think it would be a case with this, but whenever I try out a new desktop, I typically find problems with vertical monitor stuff. randomly there's like little vertical, when Cosmic was in alpha, for example, they had a bug where their screenshot tool expected a horizontal display, and the screenshots were always horizontal. So if you had a vertical display, it would go with the horizontal resolution and only capture the top half of the monitor. So it didn't expect the monitor to be rotated and just took like, that half. And it's a dumb little bug because no one had tested the screenshot tool with vertical monitors.
Okay.
And it's
Vertical monitors.
yeah, like I get it, right? Like, it's not the orientation that most people are going to be using, but it is something which probably should be supported. And I feel like I've spotted something in Plasma at one point like that, and my main point here is that people are going to do things that you don't do, right? And
Yeah.
there's going to be something that shows up, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a funny little problem. It might not be a major problem. It might not be something that is like theme breaking, but it's always interesting to see the different setups that people have and how things can go wrong. But it does add a lot of complexity into actually making things work.
Yeah, and just whenever someone finds a bug, just report them on the KDE bug reporter, and we'll have a look at it. Yeah, even if it's something like a feature request or something, it's really some minor things you don't even see. Like someone noticed that the KDE logo was smaller with the Oxygen team compared to the other panel icons. Just anything, yeah, it's appreciated. That's what makes the software better. That's how I started out contributing. First, reported the bugs.
So, I feel like we pretty much covered like everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that maybe you think is important that we didn't touch on?
I wouldn't say. I think we touched on a lot of things and managed to cover what's been happening with oxygen and air. I would just like to ask people if they're interested in this. They can contribute. They can join the Telegram group that's linked in the blog post that I made. Can just be a spectator, but especially if you have some things, especially if you've been working on like something like a fork or something, just feel free to send in a merge request or just come chat with us.
Okay. Yeah, I guess thank you for doing this. I had a lot of fun. I hope people learned at least something about Oxygen or Plasma theming or anything of the sort. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me and for covering these themes and for putting them in the spotlight.
Yeah, thank you for working on this, and I will be when this is ready, I will be sure to play around with it, and I will probably make a video or do a stream on it, because it is cool to see something that is just it's just fun, right? It's just a fun, different look, and it's bringing back the legacy that Plasma had. Even though maybe people may not super vibe with it, it's something which has historical value, and I personally think is cool.
Yeah, just using it, but also working on it. Yeah, so thanks, and I'll be looking forward to your next review.
Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say? Any way you want to direct people to? I'll link your blog down below, but if there's anything else you want to direct people to?
No, just this blog post, and then there's a bunch of links there for if people want to follow any of that.
Okay. You also have links to go and support KDE, so go do that as well if you like
that as well.
Not only this work, but just general work that goes on in the project.
Yeah, it's an awesome community, and the KDE EV can then help like developers if they don't have, like, for instance, vertical monitors or some extra software that they need that's niche. It's really appreciated, both contributing time and financially as well.
Awesome. And if you want to test this out, report bugs. Go to the bug tracker, and there's a lot of categories to pick from on the bug tracker, but it's fine. You work it out.
That's why I gave the direct link to the oxygen category, because that if you go on the general page, there's a lot.
yeah. That's a whole nother topic for somebody else, but that
different video. Yeah,
the Bugzilla it's overwhelming.
Yeah. I just do CTRL-F and then try to find normally, yeah, find my way around it.
Okay. Nothing
Okay.
else you want to say? That's pretty much it.
No. Thank you again, and I'll be seeing you.
Sweet. I'll do my outro and then we'll sign off.
Okay, great.
My main channel is Brody Robertson. I do Linux videos there 6-ish days a week. Sometimes I stream as well. It's been a while since I've streamed, so I'll have to get around to that eventually. I've got the gaming channel, that is Brody on Games. I'm not sure what I'll be playing. Maybe I'm done with the games, but as of the recording, I'm playing through Metal Gear Solid and Shenmue 2. So probably Metal Gear Solid 2? I don't know. Check it out, see what's there, and have some fun. If you're watching the video version of this, you can find the audio version on basically every podcast platform at Tech Over Tea. On Spotify, we also have videos, so check that out if you like. If you want the audio, obviously Spotify, but we're on pretty much every podcast platform, and there's also an RSS feed, so grab that if you like RSS feeds. I'll give you the final word. How do you want to sign us off? What do you want to say?
Just Katie is awesome. Try and test these themes out and let us know if you find anything that you think can be improved. And thank you again for having me here.
Absolute pleasure.